G'day Eagles fans, welcome back to True Eagle. Today I thought I would take the opportunity to map out what our best 22 looks like as it currently stands for round one of the 2026 season. We've got a few soldiers coming back in and a little bit of news around trades and potential exits in particular, and one or two additions as well, which we have covered on this channel and will continue to do so right up until the trade period, and then into the draft, which is fantastic. So in today's video, I'm going to give my best 22 as it currently stands, and then also show you what the Waffle 22 would look like, assuming everyone was fit. And I've also gone ahead and included some players that we haven't recruited yet. So for instance, Brandon Starcevic, I thought it would be interesting to see what it looks like if we are successful in getting him. Out of all the players we've been linked to this offseason, he's probably the most likely in terms of how much it's been reported on. West Coast seem to think clearly there's a chance we get Starcevic if we're talking to the AFL about exemptions, etc. I also thought it would make more sense, obviously, if we let go of Oscar Allen. I also left out Liam Ryan from this particular video. I have made the case for why I think West Coast should retain Liam Ryan, but I suppose for the creative purposes, it would be more interesting to see what we look like if we did give up Ryan in this trade period, not necessarily saying that I like it. I've also gone ahead and drafted Willem Dersma with pick 1. That one is probably a case of, if West Coast hold pick 1 of the Knights, it seems like he has emerged as a clear top pick talent. So much so that now I don't see West Coast holding pick 1 and not taking him, which is a little bit different to what I was saying maybe 4 weeks ago. It seems like there's been a shift in that space, but of course we could trade the pick, and that reminds me there's a good video suggestion by Big Cat in Bangkok, who suggested that I do a video talking about how the ways West Coast could improve their draft hand this trade period. That's a great idea, and I'll do that sometime this week. Before I get into the teams, you could do me a favor. If you are enjoying the content that I do on this channel, I would appreciate it if you consider subscribing to it. It would help grow the channel. Looking through my analytics, it's quite clear that there's a lot of people who watch the channel regularly. That number of people is higher than the amount of subscribers I have. So just thought I'd point it out if you hadn't considered yet. All right, let's crack into this round one team as I currently see it. In green, I've got players who are either new or new additions. In red, I have currently got people who I don't think are currently contracted. Jamie Cripps, I think it's fairly locked in. He's about to sign a 1-year deal. I just couldn't remember if it's been confirmed. Regardless, I think we can safely assume Jamie Cripps is going to be in the team. I've also got Campbell Chesser in red there. West Coast has put a 2-year deal in front of Campbell, and it just hasn't been signed yet as far as I'm aware. I have also read that Richmond are chasing Campbell Chesser, or at least interested to some extent. So I'll just put him in red for now, but yeah, we'll get into the team. Let's start with the back six. So with the talls there, I have gone with Harry Edwards, Brock, and Jinby as the third defender hybrid, sort of medium tall there. I think that probably works as our best combination rather than having Rhett Bazzo in this team. And with Cal Jamison delisted, that means that is all of the key back options that we have at the moment. So that's another thing that this video will help do is point out the list gaps that we have. And key back was one going into this year with McGovern obviously retiring, but also Jamison not getting on the park as well and being delisted. So with Hoff there, I feel like with Hoff playing that final week of the season, or final few weeks of the season, it's amazing how much I'm forgetting already. He definitely moved back towards the end of the season. We saw Tom McCarthy spend more time in the midfield. I'm going to extrapolate that, and I'll say maybe Brady Hoff is at his best as a medium hybrid defender who can, because he's deceptively tall, play on taller opponents, but as can Ruben Jimby. So I think we don't need to have Rhett Bazzo in this team. Starcevic is a great lockdown one-on-one defender, and I'm hopeful we get this done because it improves our team by upgrading a Liam Duggan or a Tom Cole. So I've been quite harsh here, and I've put Liam Duggan on the bench. I honestly could have been talked into not including him for round one. I do think that's kind of unrealistic, but I think had he not been a vital, experienced player this year, his performance might have justified being dropped at some point. So he stays in the team for me, but I have omitted him to the bench. As much as I love Liam, on form, he does not justify a starting six position in this backline. You'll notice I've also moved a couple of players out of that backline, but we'll keep going through the lines. So we'll go to the midfield. I've chucked McCarthy on a wing. The wing position, it's a tricky one because so many players rotate through there, and I really see McCarthy as a halfback midfielder. But I think he's probably more suited to a wing than, say, an Elijah Hewitt, so he takes a wing spot, but we're really talking about a midfield rotation who can play on the wing and play in the back line as well. The on-ballers, Harley Reid, Elijah Hewitt and Elliot Yeo, who has returned to the side in green there. there's no other combination I think that makes sense. And for me, Campbell Chesser has emerged as the other better wing to, over guys like, say, a Jack Hutchinson or a Tyrell Dewar. I think what I saw from Chesser gives me optimism that I'm willing to put him in the team for round 1 next year. Obviously, it's not a long-term lock, but I think he's got the attributes there, which I like. So then you go through the ruck. Matthew Flynn has just shown a little bit more to me as a number 1 ruck as it currently stands. Obviously, that can change, but he takes the number 1 ruck spot. And we've got Hewitt and Yeo there, obviously, walk-up starts. So interestingly, I don't think that midfield suddenly looks so bad. And I think part of that is also extra experience into these players. We should see Harley and Hewitt pass 50 games this year. Little bit optimistic about Campbell Chesser. Tom McCarthy's been an absolute find. We know the ruck situation is still a problem, but that doesn't look so bad with the re-addition of an Elliot Yeo. Let's move to the forward line here. And I've got Liam Baker, funnily enough, as a forward. I actually think maybe he can add something different to our forward line, considering the inclusion of a Brandon Starcevich. Now, they're not quite the same player, but as a quality ground ball player, I think this is an issue for West Coast, having these types of quality smalls in the front half. It's also true in the back line too. But we saw a little bit of Baker in the front half throughout this season, and he probably didn't play better in the front half, but I kind of like it for the mix that it brings and also that defensive edge to our forward line. So it's just a little bit of an idea that I'm running with at the moment. And again, another midfield rotation too. Shanahan and Waterman would be our best 2 forward combo, and Archer Reed taking Bailey Williams' spot. I think this is, not necessarily locked in, but I've favoured the younger, more talented Archer Reed, and I've omitted Bailey Williams to the Waffle for the time being. But I could be wrong about that. Bailey could have a great preseason and be in the team for round 1. Jamie Cripps stays in the team naturally, you'd think. And I've got Tyrell Dewar back in the forward line. I think if you envisage in this scenario, we have Liam Ryan leaving the club. Well, out of the other forward options, Tyler Brockman and Noah Long, and there's more Malachi who's a bit further behind. Tyrell's probably the best forward, if that makes sense. I mean, I think Long and Brockman are both kind of like small midfielders that are too small to play forward. Small midfielders that are too small to play as actual midfielders. Tyrell Dewar is actually dangerous around goals, so he kind of replaces Liam Ryan and some of those attributes in this team, and I think it's probably where he plays his best footy. But again, a versatile option who could play back and on a wing as well. So then you go to the bench, and I've kept Kelly. His last month gave me some hope that he can be a good depth veteran at this point, but again, not worthy of a starting position in this team. He's a midfield rotation. Same applies for Liam Duggan, like I said there. And Jack Graham absolutely is best 22. There's no doubt about that. But again, probably someone that I just omitted. I suppose you could have had Graham on a wing listed in this team and Chesser on the bench, but I went this way. But Graham has been a good quality pickup for us, I would say, considering the cost. And then Willem Dersma I've chucked on the bench. Now, he's just a versatile option there. We don't know if he ends up at West Coast. We don't really know what his best position at AFL level is. It might be as an intercepting defender, but he has real run and carry, real run and dash. So he could play up the field maybe as a wingman as well. And I think in this scenario, if West Coast take pick 1, that player is going to debut in round 1. I think that's a really safe bet. So in summary, I think this team looks a bit more experienced, obviously, with guys like Waterman, Starcevich, and Elliot Yeo returning to the team. I think the midfield doesn't look as small-bodied as it did, throughout 2024 suddenly. And a lot of these guys have extra pre-seasons here. There's some decent run-off half-back with Hoff, Marek, and Jinby. The key back situation is still a big question mark. Harry was good this year. Sandy Brock could obviously go up a few gears as well, but it's not a great position of strength for us. And our forward line, other than Waterman, Shanahan's very talented, and I think plays round 1, no doubt about that. But naturally, that's probably another area we're not as strong as other teams. Shanahan and Archer Reed are very young. There's also probably not a lot of goals out of those medium to small forward types, which is something I sort of alluded to throughout the end of the season there. Like, we don't necessarily get a lot of goals. Jamie Cripps and Liam Ryan were maybe our top 2 goal scorers this year, but we're talking about a 33-year-old Cripps there. Liam Baker's not a massive goal kicker. Neither are guys like Brockman or Noah Long. So that's another area that we can look to potentially draft this year. I've kind of done a 180 on potentially drafting small forwards this year, particularly good ones. I know we have some academy prospects coming through, But short of really locking them in as a future gun, I mean, if there's someone in the draft that's a real game changer, like a Isaiah Pickett is probably the extreme example, but that's still something the West Coast can definitely add. So let's look at our Waffle team, the reserves lineup, if you like. I've included Charlie Banfield. At this stage, it seems quite likely that he plays for West Coast as a father-son option. I think we'd get him quite late, and I don't think there's too much doubt about it personally. So I've slotted him in here. And the players in red, I think, are still technically without contracts. Forgive me if I've got that slightly wrong, but we'll go through them. So Rhett Bazzo and Tom Cole, it's been reported, have been offered contracts, but as far as I'm aware, they have not been locked in yet. Same with Jacob Newton. It's been reported West Coast have offered him the deal. Don't think I've seen anything suggesting he's signed it. And Malachi and Cohen Livingston are also players who at this stage we haven't heard anything about signing on for next year. Again, let me know in the comments. But I've included them because I expect them to be here, and certainly none of them have been delisted at this stage. Not sure about Cohen. He might be the most in doubt for another contract. But let's get into the team. So the backline is, funnily enough, starting to look light, even though I've included Brandon Starcevich into this team. Certainly the key back position. I said that at the start of this video. McGovern's retired, and Jamison was a key back who didn't really play this year and got delisted. And I think Barnett's played back at times in the Waffle, but I think has stopped doing that. I think he's playing forward ruck in more recent times. So I think there's no doubt West Coast need a mature key position defender at some point this year, whether it be the SSP route that we went through last year with Sandy Brock, we nearly signed James Van Es, or are we looking after a Jacob Blight? I saw a link today that West Coast is interested in Tyler Young from Richmond. This is clearly a position of need. And we also probably need to draft a decent one as well. So that's the biggest thing that catches my eye with this team. Harvey Johnston, Luca Grego, contracted players. We saw Grego debut. And they look decent, but I don't imagine play round one. I've included Bo Allen in our midfield here. And I've sort of changed my mind a little bit about the best way to develop Bo. And look, the most realistic thing I think is that he plays round one. So I don't have a strong view about excluding Bo Allen from a round one team for West Coast, because as a first round draft pick, sometimes you give these guys games for the sake of development rather than necessarily earning it. But this whole exercise does rely on us having every single player available, which is almost certainly not going to happen, touch wood. So I like Bo Allen probably playing his trade as a midfielder. I think it's most likely he ends up as a running defender or a wingman. But with a player of his attributes, I think it's silly for us to not at least try and develop him as a midfielder, because he is a chaotic, crash and bash, bull in a china shop midfielder with great athleticism. And to be honest, his weakness is probably his foot skills, which hurt you less in the midfield than, say, a half-back position. So I'm happy to see Bo maybe play round one or the first month of the season in the Waffle midfield position. And there's definitely some potential there. We'll see. Tom Grosser couldn't fit into my team. And Clay Hall, look, you can make the argument in reality, West Coast should be playing a Tom Grosser or a Clay Hall over a Tim Kelly next year. That's probably true. But at this stage, I don't feel like those guys are absolute locks for the team. And I think that in the short term, West Coast should try and set a foundation for being more competitive than they were in 2025. But I suppose that over time, throughout the season, as we readjust our goals and injuries happen, these guys will find opportunities. But I don't think that Clay Hall or Tom Gross are absolute must-play types. I think they can still develop in the Waffle, particularly Tom Gross. Hamish Davis as well, he could play AFL. I think he finished the year quite strongly for West Coast, but for me, I prefer Campbell Chesser if we're going absolute best 22 as it currently stands. Bailey Williams in the ruck, Brockman, Jack Williams, and Jacob Newton on the half-forward line. It's actually a pretty strong Waffle forward line when you think about it. I didn't include Owies, and I don't think he should play round one, barring some sort of incredible preseason. So he's in the Waffle team for me. So Brockman, Owies, Jacob Newton, and Noah Long are the smaller types. And 3 out of those 4 have played a decent amount of AFL footy, particularly Owies and Brockman. And Jacob Newton's played a couple of games. I don't think he's a lock to start in the AFL side, but who knows. And then Hutchinson's an interesting one. I've actually chucked him forward in this one. I like a lot of his attributes. I think he could be a good defensive midfielder wingman, but one thing that kind of concerned me this year was the touch of the fumbles that he had. He's just not a very clean player. But we did draft him as a high-flying, medium, sort of third tall forward who is very athletic. Could he be like a forward hybrid that we play in the goal square, but also, comes up to stoppages sometimes? A little bit like a De Goey without, obviously, the same amount of talent, but the athleticism's there, the forward craft is there. I wouldn't mind seeing him play forward in the Waffle to start next year if this is the way it pans out. On the bench, we've got Harry Barnett, who is contracted, and then, as I said, Malachi and Cohen taking up the bench spots there, but still don't know what happens there. So, funnily enough, I'm still looking at that half-back line. We do need another key back and maybe another running defender, especially when you consider Luca Grego has only played one game and was a late draft pick, so it's not as though he's a locked-in long-term player there. And Harvey Johnston didn't play a game this year. So it's actually interesting to see here. That is probably where we lack depth. And the small forward position, I don't think we lack depth. We certainly lack quality. And of course, midfielders. So I've listed a lot of positions there. And rucks, I forgot about that one. Obviously, I think with the top-end picks this year, reinforcing the midfield should be a priority. I mean, we could have 4 first-round draft picks. So even if it's not pick 1 and 2, whatever combination of picks we have, we want to have a couple of midfielders, I would have thought, in this year's draft, depending how it plays out. So midfielders, halfbacks, definitely a key defender, and maybe a project ruck, or we draft Cooper Duff-Tytler, and that answers that question for the time being. We're also probably a key forward short at this point. I think that is relatively a strong area of the ground for our talent. Jake Waterman, Job Shanahan, Archer Reed, and Jack Williams. I think that's a pretty decent 4. But, when you flesh out that Waffle 22, and now I'm playing Hutchinson as a goal square tall forward, I suppose, it means we could actually draft one without it being overkill. So we've got some options. We're not quite a blank canvas, but there are plenty of holes across the field to fill. But I also think we need to go talent first with maybe not every single selection, but particularly with 1 and 2 at this point, before you consider things like go home factor. But that's all for another video. So for now, let me know in the comments what you think of my teams. I'm sure we'll disagree. Again, Liam Ryan could still be in this team. Oscar Allen won't be. You can bet on that. Starcevic may not be after all. And there may be some players that we might trade in that I haven't discussed in this video. So let me know in the comments what you think. And for now, I'll see you in the next one. Up the Eagles.